今天我们很高兴邀请一位特别的嘉宾 Sharon Hanek 女士。Sharon 女士有着丰富的背景，她在日本的美军基地长大，后来搬到了华盛顿州，所以她对不同文化很深的了解。她毕业于华盛顿大学的福斯特商学院，获得了工商管理和会计学的学士学位，之后成为了名注册会计师。不过 Sharon 不仅在金融领域有成就，他还积极投身于公共服务和社区活动。Sharon 女士一直积极参加本地的政治和公共事务，利用她的专业知识为社区带来很多积极的变化。她曾担任 Pierce County 县长审查委员会主席，办在许多非营利组织和社区项目中担任领导角色。今天他会跟我们分享他作为亚裔美国人的成长经历，以及他对亚裔青年的一些宝贵建议。Hi, so I just have some questions for you. I just want to start by asking you whether you can share a bit of your background and how your journey brought you to where you are today.
My background is I am a Japanese American. I am considered third generation, which is also known as Sansei. I actually am different from many other people in that I was born and I grew up in Tokyo, Japan. My dad was with the military on the Air Force bases, and he was actually over there because he helped with the development of the country of Japan after the war, and so that's why we were there for such a long time. He was setting up their legal system and helped with their constitution. So then I grew up in Japan on an American base, which is why English is my first language. But then at 18, when I was going to college, I chose to go to college at University of Washington in Seattle. Came to America at that time, and I guess that's when I had my culture shock of having to come to such a nation that has so much land, and to me it was really big and a lot of spaces. And then I got married, met my husband in college, raised 3 children, and now I have 3 dogs, because each one of them had a dog, and I ended up with their dogs at one time or another. By profession, I am a CPA. So I got my business degree in University of Washington.
Sorry. So did you ever feel torn between embracing American culture and maintaining your Asian heritage? And how did you navigate any identity confusion during your school years?
I think my identity confusion came from when I went to Europe in college. I was representing the United States as a United States student. And here I am in Europe, and they asked me, well, what's life like in America? And I grew up on military bases, which means I don't know what life like was growing up in Seattle or anything. But I did know that there were some things that are uniquely, American. And I think that's what kind of shaped me, is because of that, I look at the culture, that there is a common theme of what it is to be American, a common theme of you have opportunities, you have independence. I think like the Pilgrims, they came to America to be whatever they wanted to be. And so I focus on that part of it. And I really didn't feel when other people might try to say things or treated me differently. I don't think I noticed it sometimes. It's kind of in the head of the person hearing the conversations. My mother, on the other hand, she's Japanese American, and she was one of those folks that got rounded up and went into camp. The U.S. government took all the Japanese people in Seattle and put him in concentration camp. And so she has a different outlook. And so when people look at her funny, or when people didn't give her good service, she said, it's because I'm Japanese. And that's how she felt she was treated. However, she didn't pass that on to me. So when someone treats me bad, I just think that they're a jerk. And so I didn't take it the same way. And so I think it's really how you want to perceive things. And, if you choose to let someone put you down, then you will be put down.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I was wondering, as an Asian American, did you ever face discrimination or stereotyping in schools or the workplace? And how did these experiences shape your outlook on diversity and inclusion? And you said you grew up on a military base, so maybe less so school and more so a workplace.
Probably workplace, because being Asian, sometimes you even look younger than other people. So when you are trying to go into the workplace and be a serious businesswoman or, serious nurse, sometimes people look at you and they think that you're just the secretary or something, that they don't treat you with the respect that you should have for the job. And so I did see a lot of that. But then, in a way, that made me be determined to do the best. If you're going to think that I'm the secretary, well, I'm going to come out and I'm going to study the tax code and I'm going to, rattle it off to you so I am not the secretary. I am your accountant. So I think that drove me to try to do better in a way, rather than, again, allowing it to put me down. And there was a time, a long time ago, where I think the Japanese, that there was kind of this theme of Japanese were taking over the world and some people were not thinking nicely of them. So I did feel that a little bit during that time period.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think that a lot of what you went through, it's a pretty much shared experience for a lot of Asian Americans during that time. And I know that you ran for a Washington State election, I'm pretty sure. So in 2012, you made history by becoming the first candidate in Washington State to get your name on the general election ballot through a successful statewide write-in campaign. And I think this is a pretty incredible achievement that shows your dedication. So now as you run for the Washington State Treasurer in 2024, what motivated you to enter this race? And how do you plan to build on your past experiences to make an even bigger impact this time?
Probably it's the years of being involved and being engaged. I also was on a lot of commissions and committees, planning commission, something that would be considered a children's commission in Pierce County. All of that gives you experience and gives you experience in government work. So I would say that write-in campaign just opened the doors to meeting a lot more people. And when you delve in the world of politics, you just, again, try to maintain a sense of who you are and your goals, because other people are going to try to tell you to do things a certain way all the time. But just learn as much as you can, get in as much experience, and then you can navigate through all of that and just keep your head above. There's going to be things that happen to you that are going to make you mad, or people might look down on you in a way, sort of, and you just move through it. Let's say that you don't speak English that well, and you may feel that other people are judging you for that, especially in the world of politics. But just go through, you know your stuff, and I would just encourage anyone to just stay who you are and keep moving forward as long as it's good. Just stay with integrity and honesty.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So my question is, how has your upbringing in Asian cultural values influenced your career decisions and your success in the business and community fields?
Probably just, I like numbers, so I chose the field of accounting. And if anything, it's that sense of that they think Asian kids, are smarter than other kids. That tends to be something out there. Really, it's that you have parents that are dedicated. And so I really think that the parents are the ones that kind of keep you motivated, keep you going, keep you on task. And, as you grow up and you become parents yourself, you want to keep that on, your kids, because then that's what gives them the motivation to move forward and, be the best that they can be. It comes from the family.
Thank you for sharing. So I want to ask, were there specific challenges you face as an Asian woman in traditionally male-dominated field like finance and politics? How did you overcome these obstacles?
And I did that. I think that's the worst part, if you say worst, of your life, was when you are being a businesswoman and you're going into a man's world, and when you're shorter than everyone else, that is part of it. You look younger than everyone else, and it really takes a lot to get people to look at you that you seriously, that you are a serious businesswoman. And I think you just have to tell yourself, don't let them get you down when they tell you, oh, this is the kind of coffee I want, go get my coffee for me. And I'm supposed to be the one doing their taxes for them. So you just try not to let that get you down. Try to understand that they don't understand, that they're looking at you from some predisposed mindset that they have. There were not enough Asian females going into really anything other than school teachers and nurses. So it was an uphill battle. One of my roommates was an engineer. So she had to face the same thing going into the engineering field and being the only female in her field. So you just hang in there, because as time goes by, then it all changed when people realize you can do it.
Thank you. And earlier you shared about the importance of education and family. So I was just wondering, what aspects of Asian culture do you believe have contributed positively to your achievements? And can you share a few values or traits that you feel Asian youth should embrace?
I think really it's the family values, just learning from your parents, and also the wider circle, grandparents, aunts and uncles, that help you keep your culture. What I don't like seeing, and I sit on a commission they call it Birth to 12 Advisory Board. It is on children, kind of a children's commission. And you have a county trying to make countywide decisions on families. But I think they keep forgetting that there are families that really have a great culture that they want to give to their kids. And instead, it's as if the government wants to mold families to be a one-size-fits-all way of being. And I don't like seeing that. I think they should really honor the cultures of the families that they come from. And instead, they're trying to tell kids that you can have your values apart from your families. I don't like hearing that. And there are just things that I taught my kids that were uniquely Japanese traditions, and Japanese language. And I want them to carry that. I want to see that in my granddaughter, too. And I'm trying to teach her Japanese and little traditions and holidays and things. So don't let that go away. Keep that within your family, even if you have a mixed race family. So my kids are half Japanese, half white, but they identify a lot with the Japanese traditions.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good. So, speaking about what you said about how you should listen to your grandparents and parents, because they may have a lot of knowledge or traditions that they could share with the youth. How do you think that people, especially Asian Americans, should balance family expectations and their pursuing their own passions? Because I know a lot of course, this stereotypical thing about Asian parents be an engineer, doctor, lawyer, or be failure. So there's always that joke. So how would you say what kind of advice would you give people who are struggling to balance that?
I think it is a balancing act. I once thought about it when I have parents, they want to raise me, and they chose to come to, my grandparents chose to come to America. America's that land of opportunity. It's that land where you can be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. And yet at the same time, as you go through that, what you're really doing is leaving your family and, creating your own independence. So I would say there is a balancing act at times, that the independent streak that my parents wanted to see in me was the reason why I didn't go home for Christmas when they wanted me home for Christmas, because I was traveling the world or something. And so you see that breakaway, but I think there is a time for everything. So, in your younger years, you can run around, college years after that. But when you start settling down and having your family again, then that's really a nice time to come back and, reunite, not reunite, but get close again. Because as you raise your kids, you're going to want your parents' involvement to help you do that, the extended family. So I think there's a time for everything, and there's kind of a circle that goes around, and pretty soon then maybe you might be taking care of your Asian parents, and hopefully you haven't gotten so independent that you can't be there for them when they were there for you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, yeah. And what is one piece of advice you would give to young Asian Americans who aspire to become leaders or active participants in their community, kind of like you were?
Just stick to yourself. Don't abandon your culture. Don't feel that you've got to be pressured to do things a certain way because that's the way that politics tells you to go, or, whatever that group is. And try not to give up too much of some of your values, because I think what I see a lot with all these different programs in schools or even in small businesses, they're trying to lead you down a path of more unification where we become a new culture, but that culture is not necessarily something that might be good for your family. So just try to always navigate and stay true to who you are.
So earlier, you mentioned that you have some values that you stick with. So I'm kind of curious about, what are some of your core values that you feel like have been really important for who you are now?
I think I would say it's a blend. I am Christian, so it's a blend of the Christian faith values, but alongside is the family values. So I would say the family culture, the concept of sticking close to your family, being there for your parents. That traditionally is, I don't want to just say Asian, but it's more of the different minority, I guess that's what you call minority cultures that do that. Whereas the independent Americans say at 18 years old, if you don't have a job, I'm going to kick you out of the house. So they have more of that attitude of pushing kids out of the house earlier and not always being there trying to make them stand up. But yet the Asian culture and possibly, some of the Latino cultures, they're more family oriented. So they just keep coming back to that. But I think we really need that still. And I love it when my kids live near me.
Yeah, so I think I really love the answers to your answers to your questions, but it seems like our time is up, so we'll be right back after the ad break.
肌肉骨骼伤痛、车祸、工伤，请找康健脊椎治疗中心肖明医师。康健，祝您健康。电话206-621-7501，206-621-7501。
巴克利律师事务所专业受理人身伤害索赔，多年来专门办理车祸等意外受伤的案子，索赔成功过后收费，不成功则不收费。联系电话206-920-6721，206-920-6721。
位于 Redmond 和 Bellevue 的小百灵幼儿园为1岁半到6岁的小朋友提供中英双语教学，有爱心优质教师执教，并配有营养美味配餐，每周主题课程、艺术兴趣教育等。电话425-761-3726，425-761-3726。
欢迎大家回到西雅图少年说，我是 Jessie， 今天主持人。Hi, so Sharon, I just have a few more questions for you. So I personally am really curious about what life was like for you on the military base, because of course it's not a very traditional upbringing. So how would you say it influenced you, especially being an American who grew up in Tokyo, which is a country that many people in the world have never been to? Well, not a country, a city. So what was your life like, and how do you think it influenced you?
Probably growing up in Tokyo. Tokyo is considered a pretty safe place. So even at a younger age, 10 years old or something, that I would be going shopping, off what they call off the base and things, and riding buses and trains all by myself. So it's one thing is because it was safe, and then the base itself was, think of it as a small community. So if all your friends lived near you, so that when you go to the store, you'd meet so-and-so's mom, or, or think of a small town in Washington State. It's everybody knows everybody. So that's what it's like. So I'd say it was probably more like, what you might see on TV and some of the old shows on family, where the families are, where everybody knows everyone, and you have that safety net of where your parents don't mind when you go out, and then you can go out and play, and it's, I think, very similar to a small town culture in America, but then nowadays you don't have that as much. I mean, your parents don't want you to just running around town on your own, or so that's what I think is different, is that ability to have the independence and freedom to run around, and then yet knowing that it's safe.
Yeah, so I know you went to University of Washington, which is like a very large state school. So I think that contrasts a lot to your experience growing up in a military base. I think UW is like, 50,000 people from including both undergrads and grads. So do you have any interesting anecdotes you can share about how it was like transitioning from a really small military base lifestyle to a very large college experience?
And I would also say, when you're on a military base, you have other kids around you that are your age or through high school. Because after high school, most of the kids went to college in America. So that means that you have this gap where you don't see anyone around between the ages of 19 and 30, and the people that are there have families. So I would say, coming to University of Washington, where everyone is that college age, and there's such a wide range of people, and I mean, I would sometimes just watch all the people hustling and bustling around you. Now, the busyness is like Tokyo, but yet all these people, they're there for their degrees, they're reading books, and just on the lawn, and just things like that. So it is different. I would say that it's also the being straight as an 18-year-old coming to America. Everyone seemed louder, bolder, and sometimes I feel like it was a little bit too boisterous, because I wanted to stay in the corner. It was hard to mingle if you went to an event or something. And it was really difficult for me to get used to other people, because I'm not real super gregarious or anything. So there is that difference.
I'm just backtracking a little bit when you mentioned how you kind of represented the U.S. in some exchange program. So could you explain a little bit more on that, because I'm really curious.
So here the America I knew was on the base. I had lived a couple of years now in Seattle, because I was at the university. I think it was my junior year of college that I went to Greece. They had an exchange program, and they would bring in 60 students, probably from about 45 other nations, anywhere from Poland to Great Britain. And there were some folks from Canada there. And it was really a neat situation to be friends with all these different nationalities, and you're all together in one big dorm. And sometimes at dinner they would talk about their country, or what it's. Some would say, well, what's it like growing up in Yugoslavia? And we all spoke English, and so then they would come to me, what's it like growing up in America? And I could describe by then, certain things like a Safeway store, or because that was different for other people to have that kind of variety of products and things. But it just felt odd, because I really didn't know how to explain the culture, because I was just still adjusting to it myself.
So what would you say was the biggest thing you learned from that experience?
Probably just all the different cultures, learning a little bit about each nation, because it kind of takes back to their government. Some of the people seemed a little bit more freer, or maybe they're the Protestant. I just marveled at some folks that came in with all these different hair shampoo. Like America, you have all the different choices and colors, and some are coconut based and some are raspberry based, and you see that. But then when you look at the Soviet countries at that time, Poland, Yugoslavia, those countries have been changed now. There's no Yugoslavia, but Hungary, their products were more like in a very simple wrapping. They didn't have a lot of different things. So it was just interesting to watch how the personality of the student was, or my friend was, and the country they came from. And then I even went to Poland. So when I went to Poland, I noticed that they really didn't have the range of, I'm going to say colors, like, our buildings, our cities are colorful, and, McDonald's, and everyone has their special logo and their special colors. You don't see that a lot. And those were the Soviet bloc countries.
Yeah, so I know you've been to different countries. Like, you grew up in Japan, you went to U.S. for college, you live here now. You've been to Greece, Poland. So how do you think all those international experiences changed you? Like, did you enjoy exploring different cultures? Or, do you have anything you recommend about different countries?
I think there's a lot that you can learn by going to other nations. One of the things is everything in America seems bigger. And rather, the houses are bigger, the rooms are bigger, the furniture is bigger. You also have more space between things, so you have to have a car. In some of those countries, you don't have to have a car because you could just ride the bus or the train or even bicycle. So just seeing all of that and just having that exposure to all the different types of nationalities and countries and the way they live. I mean, even the way each bathroom could be different. Asian bathrooms are different from European bathrooms, and just a lot of the different things, but that just adds to your knowledge. And then it also keeps you from becoming, I'm going to say one size fits all, where everything has to be a certain way. So that's why I don't like it when I keep seeing a lot of things where they say, well, you have to do things this way. That's not good. And I think we should go back and have the freedoms of, however you want to do your house and more choices.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, in college, I definitely wanted to study abroad. I want to, like, go to different countries in Europe and Asia, South America, etc. Just because I think having the exposure to different cultures definitely makes you grow as a person. So speaking about that, I know, like, you grew up in Japan, went to America, and personally, I know a lot of Asian Americans who are like, oh, even though we have, like, a U.S. citizenship, we don't want to vote, we don't want to, like, run for office, because they don't feel like really American, because obviously they grew up in a different country. So did you ever have that experience about not feeling American enough to, like, get involved into politics?
Probably not, because of the way my parents raised me. They raised me to be American. So that's one difference, unlike someone who might have been actually, raised into the culture and then thrown into having to come to America for a lot of it is political reasons. I don't think that choosing to run for office, it was more of an idea of service, I guess. And also, you see things are going wrong or not being right, and sometimes you might think, oh, I think I could do that. But then you watch I guess my life has put me in this perspective because I have been a CPA, so I have that knowledge. And I, the job that I'm looking at is state treasurer. So it's money, it's accounting. And the other side of it, though, was the path you get put on. It put me down politics. So I got to know a lot of people. I got to understand government systems. And so this kind of melds the two together. For other folks, I would say if you are going, kind of take a look at what you've done in the past, where the road is taking you, and that's the path maybe you should take. Politics isn't for everyone, but it's but some people are being geared for it.
I know that you believe that family values are like very, very important, and like correct me if I'm wrong, but like my interpretation is that you think a lot of immigrants and people from other cultures, they have these like strong family values that are kind of being engulfed by like the larger background culture in America of like you're trying to even like break free from your family or like be very individualistic, and that's like not your preference, right? So I was just thinking like how do you like what do you think can be done to make sure that these like minority cultures are not being engulfed by like the larger environment, but while also promoting like the unity of the nation and preventing like tribalism and division?
So part of it is I think it's natural for every one of us as we grow up to want our independence. That's kind of a natural thing. What I don't like seeing is an institution such as a school starting to help you and encourage that. I'm going to use the word separation from your parents, especially in the school system where you're at elementary or junior high age. I think that's the time when you should learn to bond with your family and your cultures. Then when you're adult, that's when you make that decision and become independent. So what I do see and the concern I have is that we have some things that are being taught in schools of trying to make some people feel differently about who they are. Then maybe it's a school system that's kind of putting that and making you think these questions and question who you are, whereas your parents are telling you one thing, and now your school's telling you a different thing. And so that's what I have concerns about that, and I would like the parents to have that stronger voice in a child's life, rather than the school system. And so from parental right, and I do see that there's things that are being taught in schools that some families, some cultures don't like seeing. But then they'll be told, well, you have to do it this way, or all this rationalizations. But it's really, I think, at that point, especially if we're talking elementary school, it is the family who should try to rein it in. And they should be the ones to be able to say, this is what I think my child should learn. And the other side of it, though, is the parents know, the family knows the kids the best. So when you start getting messages from non-family members that are saying, you should think this way, and now you're concerned because you're saying, well, that's really not my personality, but now I've got this person telling me I should think this way. I got my family telling me I should, I should remain who I am. But now that child is trapped in, which way do I go? So I think that causes confusion that's unneeded if some of the messaging was not as strong in the school system to tell children, don't listen to your parents.
So I know you mentioned that you have kids yourself. So do you feel like, as a parent, did you feel like you had these kind of experiences with your kids, or like when you were in school in America, did you like have experiences kind of similar to like what you mentioned earlier?
I think it's more so nowadays than, of course, when I was a student, with raising my kids, and I'm more concerned with my grandkids now. I mean, they're real small now and toddlers, but I see that the school systems don't honor the family unit as much as they used to. And there are just things that I would say to my kids, and I'd say, well, my last name is Hanek. They would say, well, they get to do this and they get to do that. And I said, well, then you want to go join their family? We're the Hanek family, and this is the way we do things. And that was something that I often said to my kids, is to try to point out there's different families and there's different value systems, but you belong to this family, not that family. Hopefully this is answering your questions.
Yeah, so I think a big thing you took away from what you said is that people should be able to develop their own critical thinking skills instead of schools being like, oh, you should think this way or think that way. And I think that's something my school personally does well in, because sometimes in, for example, history classes, our teacher will give us for example, political view and be like, hey, do you agree with this? Why or why not? They won't say, oh, you should agree with this or you should not agree with this. So how would you say personally that we should develop our own critical thinking skills and try to not just go with the flow, just make sure you actually believe in what you believe in, not just like following what everyone else is saying?
Part of it would be understanding the reality of certain things. And by that I mean, what I've seen sometimes is like in math classes, that there used to be more focus on the answer in the math class, and now sometimes they focus on the discussion on how you get to the answer, not the answer. And so there are times where you might have a group discussion, and some people think this answer is good and that answer is good. But in math, there actually is one answer that is the correct answer. So I've seen that sometimes in classrooms, they don't honor that correct answer. I don't know if you've experienced that, or even when you take your test, you can have a different answer if you can explain yourself well. And if you explain yourself well, then that answer is okay. What that does, though, is kind of removes the anchor of truth. And so when you don't value correct answers and you start thinking, well, it could be this or it could be that, and it might be, depending on the situation, this could be the correct answer, or maybe that could be the correct answer. Then you start moving away from an actual factual-based set of circumstances. Now, then, as a person, if you don't believe in concrete one answer, one truth, then it's really hard for you to keep identifying who you are, as a person. I am a good person that does this. And someone else tells you, no, you don't. You did that the other day. And now you're thinking through, well, am I a good person or am I not a good person? And so what I would hope is that everyone keeps an anchor in truth, and that they don't lose it.
Yeah, so just to summarize, basically, in order to develop critical thinking skills, at first, the main priority is knowing the facts.
Right.
Yes, about yourself, about scientific facts and things like that.
Right.
I just want to say it's actually really interesting. I've never heard of a school that's like, oh, in math, there's more than one correct answer. I found that really shocking. It's like maybe you saw my facial expression.
You're in great schools, because if you ever took the WASO test or the Common Core test, there are some questions on it that can be this answer or can be that answer, depending on how you explain it.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I've seen that in history classes, maybe, but definitely not math, because math is 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is definitely not 3. So
you're in a good class and you have great teachers.
Yes, I found that really interesting, really shocked. But yeah, looks like our time is up, so we're going to be right back after the ad break.
餐饮、
娱乐、
招聘、
交友、
买房、
投资、
演出，
请找西雅图中文电台。
中文电台广告使您梦想成真，最低收费每月仅$100就有机会使您的生意或者活动家喻户晓。
赶快行动吧！广告热线206-619-8698，206-619-8698，
或者发 email 到 crsradio@gmail.com。
西雅图中文电台需要您的支持。如果您曾经听到过西雅图中文电台的节目，如果您曾经在西雅图中文电台网站或者微信平台上读到过我们的报道，如果您参加过中文电台举办的演出或者其他活动，请您支持我们。西雅图中文电台是由非营利组织西雅图华人广播协会支持的，大多数的主持人多年来义务为西雅图以及全球的华人提供精神食粮。请您向具有501C3免税资格的西雅图华人广播协会捐款。捐款的 PayPal 账号是scbaseattle@gmail.com， 捐款电话206-619-8698，206-619-8698。西雅图中文电台感谢您的支持。
有温度，
有深度，
有角度，
这里是流光溢彩的思辨舞台，
讲风趣，
讲情趣，
讲乐趣，
这里有纯正地道的情境美语。
您正在收听的是西雅图中文电台西雅图少年说。
Hi， 欢迎大家回到西雅图说，我是 Jessie， 今天主持人。Hey, so Brian, I think you may have a question you want to ask. Do you want to ask the question now?
So just during the break, we were talking about this question of kind of debating on whether giving credit for right thinking in math is a good thing. So we can resume that conversation.
So I think your example was having in math that you might have different ways of approaching an answer, and we were talking about multiplication. You could have 3 rows of 4 apples, or you can write the number, let's say it's 4 times 3, the number 4 down 3 times and add it up. And that still is multiplication, and you can get an answer, the correct answer. But what if in that process you added wrong? So instead of adding you're doing 4 times 3, so you write the number 4 down 3 times, and then you add it up. What if you added wrong? Then should you get equal credit for having the wrong answer, even though the process was correct?
Well, of course, you're not going to receive equal credit, but I think like the fact that you use the right method and it's just like a simple computational error means that you should receive some credit.
And I like what you said, some credit.
Oh, well, some people are getting full credit for having. Oh, okay.
Correct.
I agree with you on
Yes.
that.
Okay, so and that's why I was saying that even though you might hit different ways, if you don't get the correct answer in math should always be valued more than partial credit. Now, that's the problem with partial credit. That's how you learn, guess and check and different things. But if you go through life thinking, I'm an A student because I always got an A on my math, and your math answers were not as good as the student next to you who actually got the right answer all the time, then that kind of devalues the right answer. Mm-hmm. And so I think as a core thinking process, we should never devalue the right answer. And also that anchors you in who you are. So always knowing, yeah, I got almost, but this is the real answer. And never forgetting that, and never allowing yourself to think that almost enough is equal to good enough. That, some people have put those two together and say, I'm a great person because I'm almost there. But yet other people might look at them and say, no, you're not there. So always know what truth is and, where you are.
I also had a little bit of a question with like math always having like one correct answer. I remember like I also had like the exact same thought like about like math always having one answer, which is like kind of like why I really like the subject more than English, because like I felt like English was almost like too subjective, where like like a teacher's bias towards students might like influence your grades, whereas like math, like it was kind of like everything was like there's one set way to do things, and like if you just do it correctly, you're always going to receive credit for it. But last year I took a course in my school, and we were learning about like different like sets of infinities, and I remember like learning about like contours, like I think like differences between like countable and uncountable infinity, where like his theorem that there was either infinite sets of infinities between countable and uncountable, or there was only countable and uncountable infinities, was like later proved correct by both like Goodall and also like Paul Cohen, where like one of them proved that there was uncountable, or there was an uncountable number of sets of infinities between the two, but also that there were like no sets of infinities between the two. So there was like two correct proofs for the same question, and like the proofs like directly like violate each other, but like they're both like mathematically correct. So like I don't know, I just think that like math, like sometimes like it's not always like black and white where there's always one correct answer.
And I would say that from your description of the kind of math that you were doing, you have accomplished all the other parts well, because it's you're into the theorems, you're into more higher level math. Those things, just like science, you might have two proofs, and now you have to kind of think it through. But you're using logic. That logic isn't changing. You're using a system of thinking through everything, and sometimes I see it, and you're beyond all the simple stuff. It's the simple stuff that kids are not being taught to the correct answer. I'm talking elementary school. Once you get those basics done, then you can go on and it's like in school. I think elementary school and junior high should be the foundation of facts, of answers. Now when you go to high school and college, that's when you can start saying, okay, all these other more theoretical things, there's a time and a place for that. There's an age for that. What I'm seeing is not even in elementary school and junior high are they having that structure and that foundation. You need that foundation first so that when you go into the higher levels, you can be where you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, so just continuing on this math conversation, I just want to share a quick anecdote before I go into my actual question. So for some context, last year I took a semester off my normal school to go to an art school because I want to major in design. So obviously art school aligns with that. And I know a lot of art school students are notorious, like stereotypically bad at math. And to be fair, that is kind of what I lied with what I saw. Like I remember we had a college fair and one of the college pamphlets literally said, "Oh, no student here is required to take math," which I found really funny because you will not see any quote unquote normal college, like normal research universities say no student is required to take math. So I remember this student. She was 15 and she was a junior, so she was ahead. And don't get me wrong, she's really smart, but she was homeschooled, and I think her math skills were a bit lacking. Like I know most people when they're elementary school, they teach how to do multiplication, like just not like below tens. Like for example, 13 times 18 or whatever. Most people would like line it up like 13 on top and 18, then you multiply it that way, then add up the sums, and that's quote unquote the correct way to do it. But since she was homeschooled, she had a completely different way. She would do like, 13 times 18. Let's do like, 10 times 18 and then 3 times 18 and add it up. And technically, it's a it's a method that's quote unquote correct. You get to the right answer. But most people would agree that the normal way of solving it is the better method. And don't be wrong, she's smart. Like her writing is phenomenal. But I just have a question because I know math in general is a more objective thing. There's always one correct answer. There's usually a better method. Like one method is faster, easier, less easy to make mistakes. But how do you apply that to politics? Because you're involved in politics. Politics can be so subjective. There's no one quote unquote correct way to do things. So how would you differentiate between what's better and what's worse?
I think math sets up a way of thinking. So when I was talking about having the correct answer, and I wonder now the way you described it, was her homeschool teacher, was her mother a teacher? Because it sounded like she was decomposing and recomposing. And what that does though is, like you were saying, 3 times 4, it's like a sentence. 3 times 4 equals this. Or maybe you have, more algebra, parentheses, plus this in parentheses, and something happens, and those are like the sentence of math, and it's a logical procedure. Sometimes when you learn how to do math the way, where you're taking 30 and it's 3 tens and thinking through that way, it makes it harder to do algebra because, you're not thinking in that linear procedure. So doing math correctly helps you kind of siphon through and cut to the chase and think in a streamline of more. Also think about the truth. And for me, though, the reason I'm running for the position of treasurer is because it is concrete, it's money. And unlike other policies, you have to understand numbers and finances and math. So that's the role. It kind of fits who I am and my personality and the training I have and all of that. So that's why I'm running for that office. But in general, if you can have that fine-tuned way of thinking logically, I think it helps anybody that's running in politics, because you're going to have all these different messages of people who want their way of thinking to prevail. And you have to kind of cut through that and say, where's that flaw in your logical thinking, and go to what's best.
Yeah, so to answer your question about her, she went through an online program. Okay. So it wasn't her mom who's the teacher. Okay. And I think, truth be told, I think that's one of the big flaws in the American system. I think like maybe in the beginning when you're like 5, or I don't know how old people learn multiplication like that, but maybe in the beginning breaking it down like that is good. But I think it was definitely a flaw in her homeschool online program where she never learned how to do multiplication that way. Like one day, I was talking to her. She was like asking me, I don't know why, she was asking me a bunch of random math questions like, what's 18 times 28? And I was just doing it in my head and telling her the answer. She was like, oh my God, how'd you do that? So I said, I just did the multiplication. So I had to like sit her down and teach her how to do multiplication, long division. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a fundamental flaw in the American system. Does anyone else have any questions?
I'm going to add, it's a good thing that there's an art school, because people who go to art school, people who think more that way, it's different from engineers and accountants, and we need all kinds to make the world. But I can say that my clients that are more artistic, they can't balance their checkbook. So it kind of carries on, and that personality carries on into their future.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. Like, I don't want to like brag or anything, but I was probably the best at math there, just because growing up, I mean, obviously I'm Asian. There's obviously a Asian stereotype about how Asians are better at math. So growing up, my parents put me through like, math programs. I learned extra math at home. So I had like a math tutoring club there, which was kind of fun, honestly. But yeah, it was definitely really interesting. She wants to get into video game design. So I think she's definitely going to need some math, especially in the coding
or that
aspect.
fine-tuned logical thinking, because to do programming, you really have to think through every step of the way.
Yeah, and I think you need calculus to do like a lot of coding. So that's definitely really interesting. I think you had a question? Or?
I have a question. Yeah. So I heard that you have a business major, and like I was wondering how that impacts what you do for like the community here.
I think having the business major, and being an accountant is that every program, every nonprofit I got involved with, they always wanted me to be the treasurer. So, but it's a skill set because every organization needs to handle money. So I was a treasurer for Little League baseball and just other things. I think the business degree, and sometimes people say business degree kind of helps you have a wide range of understanding of all kinds of different businesses. So being a CPA, I have clients, from a latte stand to a grocery store, and just all kinds of things. So I've learned a little bit about how everybody does business differently, but also trying to match up the personalities. Like you have the artists that are trying to run a business. So how can I make that bookkeeping so simple that they can't mess it up? Whereas an engineer, they're so nitpicky and, they can get it down, and I don't have to have them do too much. It looks like you have a question.
Yeah, so I think that we've been talking a lot about like hard skills, kind of like math, like logical reasoning, but I was just curious, like, are there any soft skills or like what do you think the most important soft skill is? Because I think like hard skills are definitely very important, but like people's soft skills also a big part.
So when you say, is that like electives, like music, or what would be a soft teaching, or
like soft skills, kind of like communication, or like things that you don't necessarily learn in school, but you have to learn in life?
And I think there's two things that you have to get. You can't just do all the I guess hard skills or discipline. One is we live in a society, and those that can get, have relationships, understanding, stay with the groups. One concern is so many people are just on their computer or their phone or their iPad that they think that these people that they're talking to on their, the Twitter account or something, that's their friend, or messaging. And so you lose the skill of reading faces, of doing messaging. So I always like, the personal contact. So again, that's that socialization. So doing other things, staying in groups, staying with group activities, those are always good to have. The other kind of, I'm going to call it soft skill, could be something like artwork or piano, or playing a musical instrument. But all of that also helps relax you. That's kind of a hobby, but it helps kind of keep you centered, and gives you something that you enjoy doing for yourself. I played the piano for a while, so.
Yeah, so kind of adding on to like the soft skill, hard skill discussion, I remember like 2 years ago I was in a program in the UK actually called a John Locke program. If anyone here is interested, I highly recommend. So I think what I found out from, like, we were in lectures pretty much all day, every day, but I personally found that I learned more outside the lectures by talking to like classmates or talking to the teachers after class. So do you think you have an experience like that in college? Because I know a lot of us here are in high school, and some of us are seniors about to apply to college. Some of us are like freshmen, sophomores. So how would you say is like the ratio of how much you learn in class versus outside of class, especially as a business major. I know you're more like finance, accounting, but business in general is a lot more soft skill oriented compared to like a biology or engineering degree.
That talking outside the classroom first, there's specific skills that you need to know, and if you're doing what's called auditing, there's certain things, or like a lawyer, there's laws, so you have to memorize these things, and you have to do things staying within these rules. So you have to learn the rules for whatever occupation you have. But then getting along with other, work is a people-oriented, so I think that social life you're talking about is really important. Also, you learn a lot, and of course in politics you get to meet a lot of people. Just being able to read people, to understand people, also learning things that might start irritating you, and you can't just get mad at everyone. So that socialization helps you understand yourself better, and say, okay, I don't like this language that someone is, how they're treating me, but what's a good way of coping with it? So just that interaction of all kinds of different people that help you kind of navigate life. And again, if you're on technology all the time, you don't get that because you're not getting that feedback. And then if you're also not with other people, sometimes you can allow your thoughts to kind of grow in your head and make you more nervous, more mad, more sad, whatever the emotion is. But having other people around you or sounding boards always help to kind of put things in perspective.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like growing up, I was definitely more of an introvert. I still am an introvert, but I think I had to learn to push myself and like talk to people more because, quite frankly, in life, it's easier for extroverts because you have to like socialize with people to get connections, to get jobs, etc.
Right.
So I actually really enjoyed today's interview. I think it was very informative. God, is that the word?
Informative.
Informative. Yes, I could not think of the word for a second. And yeah, so. Unfortunately, I think our time today is up. So I encourage everyone in the audience to come back next week, same time, Saturday, 8 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
感谢收听西雅图中文电台每周六晚上为您带来的西雅图少年说。
您可以在节目中拨打电话888-298-5569，
或者在我们的社交媒体脸书、微信、微博等留言。
也可以成为我们的嘉宾，分享您的故事，倾诉您的困惑。
您可以通过冠名、广告或赞助等方式来支持我们的节目。
西雅图少年说，期待您的热情参与。
下周六晚上8点，我们准时相约。